Yeah, Fleer, and I remember Fleer was the toughest one. I mean, I had to take pictures of the store. I think if I remember, they wanted. I sent them a picture of my storefront with the glass and the lettering, and then I think they reached out and said, "Hey, can you have someone take a picture with you in front of that sign so we know you're just not taking a picture of someone else's store?" I'm like, all right. So, it was funny. You think maybe, I mean, Fleer was big then too, but you expect that maybe from Tops or even Upper Deck at that time. But it was Fleer that gave me like the most grief to get, online with them.
If you look back at 90, you sold your store in 96, but starting 96, 97, 98, 99, the Fleer family of brands. I mean, just think of basketball. If you set aside a case of some of those Fleer brands, that's where all the giant, outrageous, high dollar Kobe and MJ inserts are coming from. Now they're one per case. One per case for even one of the cards in the rare insert set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I'm personally, like, I just got me thinking of like what brands like do I really miss, and I do miss Fleer. I think that's one brand that every year had something fun, and you go back into some of the designs they had. I mean, people make fun of 91 Fleer baseball for being school bus yellow, but those black Provision cards
are amazing.
As a kid, and you go back and you look at them, and you would see them in the pack, and you'd see that, and you just freak out because you're like, oh, something awesome is about to happen, and that's what I miss. And we'll never get back to that day where inserts really, people that aren't, there's some inserts that people chase, but it's all about the newest and latest, greatest autograph of a guy that puts his two letters on a card. And I understand we need that, because if not, that print switch is on, right? Because I think that's what would happen. And so, but that's really sitting here and listening to all this. That's what I miss as a kid. Is like you would see that Provision card pop up, and some of the fun designs that they had. I mean, you look over my shoulder and you can see the '88 Brett that I had one of our listeners painted, and those little red and blue stripes.
Right.
It was totally different than anything else that was coming out at that point in time. So
speaking of Fleer, I got one for the panel here. They kind of dropped off on the base sets in a couple years, like 2099. And I know someone in chat here, Chris Harris, has an opinion that Fleer Tradition is their base set for that year. But if they don't produce a traditional flagship, would you consider those their flagship product? Or do you just say they didn't release a base set that year?
Well, Fleer at the time considered Tradition their base set. So Chris is right. Fleer would actually come and tell us that's their base set. So that's their base set. So I'm okay with calling Fleer Tradition the base set. Because
despite the name.
Fleer was the worst offender of brand proliferation or sub-brand proliferation. And it should have helped them. And if they'd have hung on, like I said, their products in the late 90s were underappreciated at the time for the true scarcity they had, but the money wasn't in the industry, and we're coming out, so that was too bad for them. But where's the place for them in today's industry with each sport having one sole provider for the most part?
Yeah.
The other thing Fleer did, I'm going to put it in air quotes, wrong during that period. And unlike Ben saying wrong, I can actually get that word out. And they actually called our manager in the Price Guide area, Dan Hitt, and asked, why do you think people aren't buying the product? And it was like, well, one year you're calling it Fleer Showcase, the next year you're calling it Fleer Showcase, then you're going back to Fleer Showcase. You're not building any continuity within your own products. And that was a real issue. You couldn't say, okay, Fleer Showcase has a 6-year history or a 4-year history. In those days, 6-year history in the 90s is pretty good. But, they all of a sudden, every product had a 1-year history like it was new again. And you can't build a tradition if every year you're making a new product? You may catch lightning in the bottle, as we're talking about Project 2020, as John would say, Project 2021. But if then the next year you call it Project 2021, will it be Project 2020 again? Will it be something new? I mean, and that's what they were trying to do every year.
My recollection is that Fleer back in those days, and I think there's enough time has gone by I can say this, but every card company hires smart people to try to make good decisions, not to go out of business, but to make money. And Fleer was no different in one sense, but many of the decision makers in Fleer at the time were not from within the industry. And so they were, I think, Rich, treating it a little more like a packaged goods, a consumer goods company. We can do this. This works with toothpaste or something. I'm not sure what they're now, but when we went to see them, and I don't think you were there, Rich, but when I went there with a couple of our guys, they did less listening at the time. They were more wanting to tell us what we were doing wrong. And we weren't perfect, but we always tried to have a really good dialogue with all the card companies in a kind of symbiotic way. We didn't want to be dependent on them or vice versa. But Fleer was pretty strident, and this is who we are. This is who we are. This is what we're doing. And then, poof, they weren't there.
Yeah.
Isn't that what happened with Pinnacle as well in 97, 98, where Jerry Meyer came in and he had all these great retail ideas, but they weren't really hobby-focused ideas, like Pinnacle inside the cards in the can, and the bigger the box is, the more space we'll take up in the hobby stores. And they were looking at it the exact same way from what you're telling me Fleer's looking at it.
Yeah, I got to be careful. Jerry lives not far away.
Okay, sorry about that, Jerry.
So let's say he was a very innovative executive. Not all his ideas worked, but he was out there trying, again, very capitalistic. But and like I said, it can bite you if you try to do things that work in other industries that don't necessarily work here. But the cans. What were you thinking, Jerry?
I still got some of those in my garage. True story.
So let me ask everybody else then. We talk a lot about what's going on, but I always thought at the time that to do the hobby correctly, you almost had to be a contrarian in terms of the business model, where things that worked and this is 25 years ago, so it could be different, but the contrarian viewpoint worked better than the standard viewpoint. Do you think that we're more standard viewpoint today, or do you think if y'all pay more attention to the new card market than I do? Or do you think if somebody did something contrarian, it could really explode? Or do you think something like Project 2020 is the contrarian viewpoint?
Well, I think it's kind of, it's a toe into the water. I think that a lot of people like and this goes to say the Leaf, right? Because they're doing it a completely different way. They're putting out products without the logos, and they're I think one of their biggest successes is the repack stuff of other people's product with one of their cards in there. And not a lot of people are fans with the way that goes about. I believe from the feedback and things I've heard and seen, where I think people are more into the traditional, like I want the logos, I want it to have this and that. And that's why we see some more success. There's a few things where I think people give that up as higher end stuff. Like we'll see with National Treasures baseball. Some people give it up on that because of what that can bring in.